International students, if you're doing A-levels and you're thinking about coming to the UK, you might want to assess that decision a bit more. And I say that because the deal you think you're signing up for stopped existing about 2 years ago. And getting this wrong could not only cost you a lot of money, but also 2 years of your life. So by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what a UK university degree will cost for you, and also give you some raw material to see whether or not it's actually worth it. Now, for a long time, a UK degree was a very good deal for international students. You go to a very wealthy country, you get a good qualification in your CV, and you're able to work there for 2 years. And who knows, maybe, if you do a good job, your employer likes you, maybe they sponsor that for even longer. And then you could eventually get into a citizenship sort of situation. I know a guy from Sri Lanka. He's a great guy. He did his degree years ago. I think almost about 9 or 10 years ago. He finished his degree, and then he got sponsored to keep going on his visa, and then all of a sudden now, he's a full-on citizen, and he's built a great life for himself in the UK, and he's also got that flexibility now where he can always go back to Sri Lanka, but at the same time he's able to have access to a lot of opportunities that he otherwise wouldn't have been able to get. So if a UK degree is a golden ticket, how come people aren't applying for it? Because from the data, you can see that they're not. So to give you an example, in April this year, that's 2026, applications for UK student visas fell by nearly 40% on the year before, which is pretty insane to say the least. And that follows a trend from about 2 years ago, where basically in 2024, the government banned most international students from bringing families with them. So you've got this big group of people that are literally willing to come to the UK, pay large amounts of money to study. So why would you turn them away? Well, the elephant in the room here is basically that this is due to immigration policy. And look, this isn't a political channel, so I'm not going to get into that. But what makes this interesting is the fact that there is a ongoing battle between basically what the universities want and what the UK government is pursuing. And the situation you end up with is, you've got universities that obviously love the international students, but you've got the UK government pursuing a more restrictive immigration policy. So ultimately, it's international students and it's actually UK students as well that are kind of being trapped in the middle of this. Ow. So let's get into that a bit more. Looking into this a bit more, the picture that's painted for me is basically that the UK universities are financially fucked. And I say that because most UK universities are actually losing money teaching British students. What we need to realise about the UK is that fees are capped, so they're not covering the cost. And even those fees are pretty massive for UK people. So these universities are literally on a lifeline from international students, aka you. And the thing is, this is actually bigger than you think. Nearly 45% of English universities are heading into a deficit, which is pretty insane. So we know the UK government's making it more restrictive. Okay, that's fine, we get that. We know universities kind of like the international students because, well, without international students, the lights don't come on. But now the question is, how does this actually affect international students? In the weeds. How does this actually affect you? Now, this is the part that's pretty big because basically what's happened is, remember what I spoke about before with the 2 years? Well, that's now been cut to 18 months. And that starts from January 2027. Now look, let's not all get dramatic, it's 6 months. But this is where the practical thing comes in, because in practicality, you gotta think about it like this. A lot of graduate jobs, they occur cyclically, right? So for instance, a company might have a graduate intake once a year. So before, with 2 years, you can basically bet on a company having 2 graduate intakes per year, perhaps. Okay, obviously I'm generalizing it, it's not all jobs, but just for general purposes. But now with 18 months, you can only rely on it for 1 year. So in practical terms, for a lot of companies that do graduate schemes, that's where it alters the balance a bit. This is all just university fees, visa stuff, etc. But what about the cost of living? How does that affect you? So here's the thing about living costs, right? For the tuition alone, we're already paying 2 to 4 times what a British student is paying. But once we add the living costs on top, according to many sources here, we're looking at something between £27,000 and £55,000 a year. So basically you're paying, and this comes at no surprise really, you're paying a lot more just for everything. And what you're getting for what you pay for is basically under scrutiny now. It's getting a lot harder. So a fair question you're probably asking right now is this all just one big scam? And look, I'll be honest with you, I've made this all a bit doom and gloom to paint the negatives because look, there is obviously, it's important, right? Things have happened, things have changed for international students. UK universities are really in a bad financial situation. That's all true. And for the purposes of, entertainment or whatever, I've had to paint it as pretty bad, but it's not all bad. Don't get too dramatic about this. Speaking from my own experience, I didn't actually study in the UK itself, right? So I actually studied in South Africa. Okay, so I moved here when I was a kid, studied here, and at least from the university education quality, obviously I haven't been to a UK university, so I can't really make a fair comparison, of that compared to a South African degree. But what I can say is that when I was in the UK, again, my South African degree didn't really prevent me from getting a job at all. Okay, that's not to say that yours won't, or your degree is also going to be fine, but I can only give you my own experience. And generally what I've found is a lot of people I know from South Africa that moved over to the US and the UK as well, some of them end up just coming back, okay, because they couldn't really handle the international pressure. They end up coming back and, they just end up doing a South African degree anyway. So I'm only saying that to say that, look, I don't know which country you're in or whatever, but even if you don't end up pursuing a UK option, it's not like it's the end of the world. Everything obviously differs case by case, so you got to look into that. But let's go into the UK in a bit more detail and the upside there. Now, the upside here is the fact that graduates are still in work within about a year, according to the sources I read. And obviously the UK is a country, you've got real advantages there, you've got real opportunities. And its degrees are a lot more streamlined. There's not a lot of bloating where you have to do 4 years instead of just doing 3. So really you can go in and get it done relatively quickly. And obviously UK universities still carry a good amount of weight. So the question really is not whether or not UK university degrees are good. And I understand there's a whole can of worms there because there is an argument now of saying, well, are university degrees at all even relevant anymore? And that is a very, that is very much a large discussion beyond the scope of this video. But assuming that you're doing a degree that is directly linked to a job, right? So something like STEM or a profession or whatever. The question is not, is it good? The question is it worth it relative to what you're paying? That's ultimately what you need to be thinking about. So that's just a quick analysis of the data I found regarding where UK universities are at the moment and how it's all relating to international students. I know a lot of you guys are doing A-level maths at the moment. So if you're struggling with that, I know it is quite important for a lot of you for your UK applications. So if you're struggling with that and need extra help, make sure to click the link below to head over to a completely free student community. There's tons of resources there that can help you out. And just to recap, UK is still a great place, but what it comes down to now is really just thinking strategically and really weighing up the costs and benefits. It's not just the dream place. You really have to be strategic and kind of have a plan going into this.